Trump keeps bragging about how he stood up to China, but in reality, his policies have done more to push the world toward China than to weaken it. His trade war was supposed to hurt China's economy, but instead, it forced China to become more self-sufficient and build stronger partnerships with other countries. His 25% tariffs on allies like Canada and Mexico were supposed to protect American industries, but they ended up damaging US businesses and pushing those allies closer to alternative trade partners, including China. And his reckless foreign policy, from attacking NATO to embarrassing himself in meetings with world leaders like Zelensky, has only made the US. As America isolates itself, China is stepping up and filling the vacuum. China is already benefiting from Trump's missteps, but the real impact will be seen in the medium to long term. The trade war forced China to accelerate its shift away from reliance on US exports, and now it is investing heavily in domestic industries and technological innovation. The Chinese government is pouring resources into AI, semiconductor production, and green energy, industries that will define the global economy in the coming decades. Instead of being dependent on American technology and supply chains, China is building its own, which will make it even more competitive in the future. Meanwhile, American businesses that lost access to Chinese markets during the trade war are struggling to regain their footing. Many of them may never fully recover, giving Chinese companies more room to dominate. The tariffs on Canada and Mexico have also had long-term consequences. These two countries were once America's closest trade partners, but Trump's aggressive policies made them rethink that relationship. Now they are expanding trade agreements with China and other nations, reducing their reliance on the US. The more countries diversify their trade partners, the less power the United States has to influence global markets. This plays directly into China's hands, as it continues to position itself as the more stable and cooperative economic partner. Trump's diplomatic failures are having an even bigger impact. His hostility toward NATO and constant undermining of European allies have made them question their reliance on the United States for security and economic leadership. In response, European countries are strengthening their ties with China, which is presenting itself as a reliable and forward-thinking global power. The Belt and Road Initiative is expanding China's influence across Europe, Africa, and Asia, providing infrastructure and investment that many countries desperately need. While the United States under Trump retreats from international commitments, China is actively building long-term alliances that will reshape global power dynamics. China is not just sitting back and benefiting from Trump's mistakes, it is actively taking advantage of the United States' retreat from the world stage. With America pulling back from global institutions, China is stepping up its presence everywhere. It is increasing its influence in the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, and international financial institutions. While Trump spent his presidency threatening to pull the United States out of global agreements, China positioned itself as a leader in global trade and diplomacy. One of the biggest areas where China is expanding its global role is in developing nations. Through the Belt and Road Initiative, China is funding infrastructure projects in over 140 countries, including roads, railways, ports, and energy systems. This not only strengthens China's economic ties with these nations, but also increases its political influence. Many of these countries, frustrated with the West's reluctance to invest in their economies, are turning to China as a more reliable partner. Unlike the United States, which often ties aid to political conditions, China offers investment with fewer strings attached, making it an attractive alternative. Even in areas where the United States used to be dominant, China is stepping in. In Latin America, traditionally considered America's backyard, China has become a major economic partner. Countries like Brazil, Argentina, and Chile are deepening trade relations with Beijing, as China becomes their biggest export market for commodities like soybeans, copper, and oil. In Africa, Chinese companies are building everything from highways to tech hubs, positioning China as the continent's most important economic partner. As America focuses on isolationism, China is quietly securing long-term relationships that will pay off for decades to come. China's rise is also visible in technology and defense. While Trump was busy attacking US allies, China was making massive investments in its military, modernizing its naval and air capabilities, and expanding its presence in the South China Sea. While the US struggles with political division and short-term economic policies, China is playing the long game. Its investments in artificial intelligence, 5G networks, and advanced manufacturing are setting the stage for a future where China dominates global innovation. American companies, once seen as the leaders in these fields, are now struggling to keep up as China develops its own tech giants that rival Silicon Valley. But if there's one area where China has already surpassed the US, it's in economic strength. In terms of purchasing power parity, China's economy is already the largest in the world, overtaking the US years ago. While the US is still ahead in nominal GDP, that won't last much longer. By 2035, China's total GDP is projected to surpass America's, making it the undisputed global economic leader. And with that shift comes political influence, technological dominance, and control over global markets. Once China takes the top spot, the United States will never catch up, especially if it continues to push allies and trade partners away. America used to be the world's manufacturing powerhouse, but that's long gone. China now produces more goods than any other country, and while Trump talked a lot about bringing jobs back, manufacturing in the United States never recovered. Instead, China expanded its industrial base, making itself the center of global supply chains. While the United States struggles with rising costs and a shrinking industrial sector, China is building the future. Its advancements in robotics, automation, and clean energy manufacturing are ensuring that it will stay ahead, while the United States fights over outdated trade policies that don't work in a modern economy. Looking ahead, Trump's policies are setting the stage for a world where China, not the United States, is the dominant superpower. As China continues to innovate, expand trade, and strengthen its global partnerships, America is falling behind. Trump's isolationist approach has accelerated this shift, making it easier for China to take the lead in industries like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing. In the long run, the United States will struggle to regain the trust of its former allies, and may find itself playing catch-up in a world where China is calling the shots. If Trump's goal was to weaken China, he failed, because everything he did only made it stronger. Please like and subscribe to stay tuned for future content.